Today we're digging into a huge question. Are banks actually funding a greener future? Let's find out. You'd think banks are helping us shift to a cleaner economy, but is that really what's happening?
In theory, banks could be a huge help, right? Funding green tech or shifting loans to cleaner companies.
So researchers looked at the evidence comparing bank loans in the US and the European Union. And whoa, what a difference! After 2015, US lending actually seemed to make it harder for green firms. So why the split? And even in the EU, are banks really choosing to go green, or is something else going on?
To get the real story, they zoomed in on Denmark, one of the greenest countries out there.
And at first glance, things in Denmark looked pretty good. More money was flowing to less polluting companies. But here's the million-dollar question. Was this a deliberate choice? Were banks actively leading the change? See, it all comes down to one key difference: active versus passive reallocation. Are banks choosing or just following?
And check this out. The data from Denmark tells a really surprising story. It turns out almost all of that shift to green lending was passive. The greener firms just grew faster.
Those active, conscious decisions by banks? Yeah, that's the tiny solid bars. They barely made a dent. And get this, sometimes banks were actively lending to the dirtiest firms. They weren't steering, they were following. The researchers put it bluntly. They found zero evidence that banks were actively managing a green transition.
So the big takeaway here? Banks are market followers, not climate leaders, plain and simple.
And just following the market isn't going to be enough to fund the huge investments we actually need.
Which leaves us with a pretty urgent question. If the banks are just following, who's going to lead?